The Business is sponsored by Kingston Smith Chartered Accountants.
Hello and welcome to The Business. I'm Trevor Merriden with the show that's essential listening for the West Herts business community. Tonight, it's all about learning to work. How can employers bring out the best in young people in the workplace? Businesses always moan about an education system that fails to meet their needs, but should they be looking in the mirror instead? What could UK PLC be doing better to get a double whammy, getting the best from young talent and boosting the bottom line? In the studio, we're delighted to have Katerina Rudiger, Head of Skills and Policy Campaigns at the CIPD, an organisation really driving the youth employment agenda. We have interviews with Sharon Gaffney, Head of Education and Training at Wenta. They're on a big drive to find more employers to take on apprentices. And we're also talking to businesses, large and small, who have done exactly that in the form of multinational Barclays Bank and local accountancy business Smith Milne. And of course, we'll be talking to the young apprentices they've taken on as they find their first foot on the employment ladder. We want to hear your views, so do get in contact on studio number 01727 839 926 or on Twitter at RVTheBusiness. As always, though, I'm joined by Vicky Scott and Clare McAnulty. Good evening.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Trevor.
And good evening. So how are you and what have you seen in the news this week?
Well, I've got a raging cough, but I understand that there's lots of radio presenters with raging coughs at the moment. So if I suddenly start gulping, then you'll know what's going on. But I've had an interesting business week, and it's been really interesting to look at this sector of youth unemployment and trying to get youth into work. And I don't really understand why it seems that some people, or some young people in particular, will grab any opportunity they can find with all sorts of enthusiasm and really take advantage of the help available. But others just don't seem to want to take advantage of anything that they're offered. And I was listening to a fantastic interview with Kanya King yesterday. She was recently recognised as one of the top 100 most influential women in the UK today. And she's the energy, vision and brilliance behind the hugely successful Mobo Awards. And her story is one that young people all over the place could certainly learn from. She was the youngest of 9, I think it was, and she was claiming that her entrepreneurial spirit simply came from necessity. She asked herself how on earth was she going to get on except through her own sheer determination. And when she shared her own ideas with school, they, and to be quite frank, she also said her mother, told her that she would do very, very well if she just went down to the local supermarket, started working the tills and worked her way up. So, not to be deterred, she went on to realise her dreams for the music industry. She says that naivety was an advantage, which I think is a fantastic expression. Naivety was an advantage because she just didn't realise quite how impossible her dreams were. And then when no one else believed her, she took all the financial risks herself and as a result is now reaping all of the rewards. And she doesn't have to share a single penny of her many newly found millions. So it was a really inspiring story. Kanya's view was if you had to sleep 3 to a bed and 5 to a room, wouldn't you want to get out? And it really made me think back to this youth unemployment situation. Yeah. You know, she had nothing going for her apart from her own determination. Some people will just move mountains to get on, and other people just don't seem to do it.
I love that phrase, naivety, you know, being an advantage. You know, I remember there used to be this, I think it's a Sunday Times column saying things I wish I'd known when I was 18. But actually, do you all want to know things when you were 18? I mean, you just make a completely different sort of, you make a hash of it in another way, I suppose, you know, by actually being wise, you know, before you actually sort of got to 40 or 50. But no, I think that's great. Sort of naivety should triumph sometimes.
I think too that sometimes if you knew what would happen, you probably wouldn't do it, and that's not really good. You want to be too prepared for everything in life. You sometimes just want to go for it. Yeah.
Claire, have you got a story?
Yeah, well, I came across this article this week which asked the question, what is the best way to future-proof your SME, your business? And according to the Federation of Small Businesses, one of the best is to be tech-savvy. 62% of their members agreed that technology improved customer communication, while 59% said technology was beneficial for boosting their firm's innovation. Getting yourself online is one way of boosting your business. with a McKinsey study finding that SMEs with a strong web presence grow twice as quickly. Another finding was that firms who got to grips with e-commerce are much more likely to have the edge over the competitors in terms of exports. I mean, this does all seem a bit like common sense nowadays, but it is surprising that there are still many companies who have very basic websites and no social interaction. It could be that possibly that they've been around a while, have already built up a lot of clients, and they actually don't feel the need. However, for new businesses starting up, I mean, I would say these things were essentials. What do you think?
Oh, it's a really, really interesting one, this, because I don't have a website for my business.
Oh, shocker.
And I think it's really, really important, actually, because so many people jump into business. They don't quite know what their business is going to be about. They don't really know what their customers need or want. But they think that the only way they can actually get off the ground is to have a website. So they spend a few £1,000s on a website that is neither representative of their business nor suitable for their clients. But they've got a website, so they feel as though they've ticked that box. And actually, if they'd have just got out there and started talking to customers, started talking to clients, and really developed their proposition and got a few clients under their belts before they dived in, then they would not have wasted so much marketing money in the first instance.
And I think in my sort of content-driven view of the world, that you've got your message and you've got your medium, and the website is another medium, and you have to get the message right. And and if your clients are people who don't really look at websites, I mean, most of us do, but for sort of reassurance or backup, then actually, if it doesn't work or it doesn't make much of a difference, then you shouldn't invest huge amounts of time. I'm not, I'm very pro website, but at the same time, it's much more important you get the message and how you say it and how you talk about it first.
I think a lot of people don't. They have websites that don't actually do anything for their business anyway. Yeah. They don't know. People aren't looking at it and they're not responding to it because it isn't getting the message out in the first place. But they think that it's okay.
Yeah.
So yes, there's lots to be said for having a really good website and having really good interaction on social media, etc. But only if it's absolutely right, the message is right, and that the customers are responding in that channel. Lots of customers don't still. Okay,
well, my story is kind of a bit more back towards the subject of our show. Now, both major parties are talking a big game on apprenticeships, both major political parties, that is, training programmes for people in work. The Tories say they want to increase their number, delivering, quotes, 3 million apprenticeships over the next Parliament, an average of 600,000 a year. Now, that's a big number. And then Labour is, as I understand its plan on apprentices is longer term. We'll ask Katerina about this when we introduce her just after the break. Sort of whet her appetite, get her sort of thinking about things. Their plan is a little bit more longer term, to have a number of under 25 apprentices in England rise to equal, as I understand it, the number of young people going to university by 2025. My big question for me, call me an old cynic, but is the politicians make these big pronouncements, but are they really in tune in understanding what it is that will drive? Ultimately, it's going to be an employer-led solution. Employers have got to want to do these things, no matter how much the state gets involved. As to how much do the politicians understand of what's going on, versus the need to actually sort of unlock the employer desire to do it.
Well, I think we will find that out tonight, and what will be quite interesting is just how important it is to start at local level with apprenticeships, and I know that we're going to be covering that a wee bit later with Katerina.
Great. Okay, Vicky, do you want to do the?
Well, what I just wanted to say on that point is that politicians always dive in, and it's all about just another big phrase or another big number to try and win votes. And to be honest, it was the politicians that sent loads and loads of kids to universities, promising them jobs when actually there weren't necessarily the jobs following the universities. It was almost presented as a guarantee that you'll get a job if you've got a university degree. So it's just another one of those lots and lots of numbers. Anyway, we really want to hear your views. Please get in touch with us. Call us on 01727 839 926. Tweet us at RVTheBusiness or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.
The Business, sponsored by Kingston Smith Chartered Accountants.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
If you enjoy singing and are looking for an uplifting musical experience, the St Albans Choral Society guarantees a friendly welcome to new members. The choir numbers around 80, rehearses on Thursday evenings in central St Albans and performs at various local venues including St Albans Abbey. If you have a reasonable voice and like a musical challenge, go along and join them. For further details, see their website, choralsociety.com, or call the membership secretary on 01727 831 838.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
Dagnall Street Baptist Church has a welcoming, friendly atmosphere and can be found in the city centre. Regular Sunday services are held at 10:30am and 6:30pm. There are also weekday social meetings, special events and concerts. Our busy, relaxed coffee shop deserves a visit and is open 10 till 2 Monday to Saturday. Our website, www.dsbc.org.uk, has details of our regular programme and future events, plus the opportunity to download our monthly magazine. We also have a Facebook page where you can catch up on our latest news and chat.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
And welcome back to tonight's theme, and it's all about learning to work. How can employers bring the best out of young people in the workplace? In the studio, we're delighted to have Katerina Rudiger, Head of Skills and Policy Campaigns at the CIPD. It's an organisation really driving the employment agenda. Welcome, Katerina.
Hi.
It's lovely to have you here, but I think probably first off you better explain to everybody what the CIPD stands for.
Yes, of course. So we're essentially the professional body for HR. So anyone who works in HR, either an HR director or perhaps in recruitment or learning and development, would be our member. We have 130,000 members across the UK and internationally. So we're really driving the HR profession in that way.
So how important is the whole universal, the youth employment situation to CIPD?
Well, it's very important to us. So we're also a charity, and our purpose is to champion better work and working lives, and that absolutely has to start with young people being able to access the labour market. But for us, there's also business reason to get involved, because many of our members worry about skill shortages, they worry about talent pipelines. So really what we need to do is help them to access young talent and build their engagement with young people.
So there's sort of two sides to this particular coin. We've got a youth unemployment. Well, have we got a youth unemployment situation? What is the unemployment in youth at the moment? Is it getting better?
It is getting better, but it has been a huge issue for the last few years. And whilst the situation is improving, as a young person today in Britain, you're still less likely to be employed than an adult. In fact, the ratio of youth unemployment towards adult unemployment is that you're 3.5 times less likely to be unemployed, less likely to be employed. So it is still a huge issue, even though the situation is improving.
And just for a bit of clarity, what age do you officially become an adult these days?
Well, we're looking at the 18 to 24-year-old group, so it's around 24 years.
Right, okay. So we've got the youth that have got a problem with getting into the workplace, and then we've got companies that are worried about skill shortages, they're worried about getting people into the pipeline. You know, it seems like there should be a very easy bridge there. So what are the CIPD doing to formulate that bridge?
Yes, so there's a real disconnect, Vicky, between employers and young people, and I think that's where we have to start. So it's not just all about recruitment, it's about the wider piece around the engagement between employers and young people. So that really starts at schools. So we need to get employers into schools and get them talking about the world of work, get them talking about the opportunities that are available, because quite often young people really don't know what is out there in terms of employment, and they need to be inspired. I think we had earlier the stories around, what is it that gives you that sort of deciding moment, that spark. And quite often it's role models or mentors that do that, and not many young people have those at home and have those opportunities. So really we need to start with getting employers into schools, and then of course we need to offer more access routes like apprenticeships you mentioned earlier, and that politicians are very keen on apprenticeships, and there's a reason why that is. So apprenticeships can be a really good way to bridge that gap between education and work. They give young people a softer landing in the labour market because they combine work and learning. And in fact, those countries that have good apprenticeship programs have also lower levels of youth unemployment, so it is working. But apprenticeships are only one option. So, there are work experience programs, graduate schemes, school leaver programs. We really need to look at the variety of routes that we can offer in terms of labour market access.
Let's just have a look at a few of those. I mean, just explain the difference between an apprenticeship, for example, and a traineeship. Are there any differences? Am I just using different words?
So a traineeship is usually happens before the apprenticeship. So it's for those young people that aren't quite ready for an apprenticeship, and it combines work experience, it combines some classroom learning like math and English, and it really prepares young people for an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship is then what combines classroom learning with really on-the-job training.
I see. And internships, where does the internship fit in?
So internships is sort of a bit more of a work taster. So it's usually more for graduates or sort of for the older cohort that want to spend a few weeks in a company or in a specific sector and find out really whether that is for them, and also in a way get the foot in the door within an employer or with a sector.
I've heard, and I don't know whether my colleagues here have heard this, but there seems to be a little bit of sort of discussion around internships only being possible for wealthy kids who don't need paying, or apprenticeships, it's just cheap labour for businesses that don't want to pay a decent wage. Are those two comments founded at all?
Well, of course, there are always going to be sort of bad examples, but I think the majority of employers really puts a lot of time and effort into this and really realise that it's an opportunity to engage with young people and bring young people in. Why would you set out to run a bad apprenticeship scheme? You don't. So most employers invest a lot of time, but I guess what they need is support, and this is really where, as the professional body for HR, we help. So we have a lot of practical guides around how to set up and run high-quality apprenticeship schemes, how to structure work experience placement and internships that are beneficial for both sides, so that both the employer as well as the young person get something out of it.
I'm interested, Katerina, in those who don't offer, those employers who don't offer any kind of support of the types that we've described already. I mean, to what degree do you think it's ignorance, as in not really being aware of how perhaps they can engage with young people, and to what extent do you think it's reticence, as in you often hear the cry from employers, young people these days, they don't have the skills, things like that, as if it's something that happens in a box over there somewhere, and actually, but these same employers haven't got involved. I mean, to what extent do you think there's actually quite an untapped quite an untapped group of employers in the middle who probably would get involved if they just only knew a bit more about it?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Trevor. I think it's almost always about making that first step and taking that leap, and those employers who take that leap then actually turn around and say, do you know what, those young people are great, why haven't I done this earlier? But it's really about sort of getting involved, and 7 out of 10 employers do see the business case for recruiting young people, for engaging with young people, but quite often they don't know where to start. And then, to be honest, you guys in the media are sometimes not helping, because there's so much negative press around young people that says young people are not work ready, young people are lazy, they don't have the right attitude. Some employers might think, oh, well, why should I bother? And it's really those who then sort of overcome this that really see the business benefits. And I think we hear later from some of those employers who have done that and have really turned those perceptions around.
Well, you won't find that on this show, because we're always eulogising the young, aren't we? So,
yes, we are actually. That we meet a lot of young people through the show, and they do seem to have so much about them and so much entrepreneurial spirit and so much get-go that that it's really inspiring. What does surprise me is you mentioned trying to get more interaction between business and school, And there is very, very little at all. And I remember, when I was at university, I was at a place in London called Imperial, and it had even then, years and years, hundreds of years ago, it had an incredibly interactive college and business sort of network, which made it probably one of the best colleges in the world because of that the commercial attitude to its research. And that was 20, 30 years ago. That we should be still saying now that businesses aren't getting involved with education, that local businesses aren't walking into local schools, seems a shame. How can we encourage them to do that?
I think many employers think they don't have anything to offer, but in fact they do. The mere fact that they go into a school and talk about their company, about their job, makes a huge difference. But we have to make it easy for them. So what we do is we collaborate with a charity called the Education Employers Task Force, and they run a wonderful initiative called Inspiring the Future that connects schools and employers. So you just have to sign up as a volunteer, and then the school contacts you. So I guess it's about making that very easy for both sides, schools and employers, because again, schools have a lot of pressure on them, and their budgets are very stretched, so we have to make it very easy for both sides.
And just one last question before we move and listen to some other people's views, and I hope you're going to join us in the discussion. But are we doing quite a good job in Hertfordshire? We seem to have quite a lot of apprenticeship schemes. Oakland College are very, very active. I get asked probably once a week, either by phone or on email, if I can take apprenticeships into my business. Are we doing a reasonable job in Herts?
It sounds like you're doing a great job by all the engagement it's been around the show and sort of the interviews we're going to hear later. Of course, there's always more you can do, but I think it's about, making that first step, and it sounds like you've done that, which is great.
Well, let's hope that some businesses that are listening tonight actually hear some inspiration and get into schools and get onto it with apprentices.
Okay, well, thanks for the moment, Katerina. We'll be coming back to you several times, commenting on the clips. And we're going to be spending much of the second half of the show by focusing on the area of apprenticeships. As you heard from Katerina, there's a lot of other areas, but we thought we'd zone in on that sort of area, and by getting some evidence from around the region and looking at businesses large and small, and we'll be doing that right after this break.
The Business, sponsored by Kingston Smith Chartered Accountants.
At Kingston Smith, our ethos is simple. We want our clients to succeed. Welcoming owner-managed businesses and individuals, we pride ourselves on offering the local business community a range of services that best supports their needs for maximum growth. Kingston Smith, helping our clients succeed. Find us on St Peter Street in the heart of St Albans, or for more information, head to kingstonsmith.co.uk.
Wondering what you could do this weekend? Well, you don't have to go far from home. There's plenty to discover on your doorstep. Join me, Ellie O'Fira, this Friday at midday, when we'll be giving you some great ways to get out and about close to home. That's Out and About, Friday at midday, here on 92.6 FM, Radio Verulam.
If you want to get in touch with the business on Radio Verulam, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Business. It is about 23 minutes past the hour. Our show theme this evening is Learning to Work, how employers can get the best out of young people in the workplace. Wenta has recently been promoting its apprenticeship scheme. This week, I spoke to Sharon Gaffney. Clare spoke to Sharon Gaffney, not me, the head of education and training. Sharon started by explaining that Wenta are working hard to fill the knowledge gap among businesses about apprentices.
We realised that small businesses, and particularly micro businesses, were still very, very confused about the apprenticeship scheme. So one of the things that they kept saying is that, you have to be an engineer, or you have to be a plumber to have an apprenticeship. And we realised there were still so many myths out there, and we could act as an intermediary to be able to give them the full information on what the benefits of taking an apprenticeship was.
Can you just give us a rough, maybe a range of the type of thing that a company could use an apprentice for?
The apprenticeship opportunities that have come to us are so varied. One of them particularly is a trainee solicitor. So therefore that's deemed as a higher apprenticeship, but somebody can actually train to be a solicitor, go to university, but under an apprenticeship, which is fantastic. But we've also got things like recruitment, interior architecture, administration, we have estates and lettings, web design, and the list continues.
I wonder if you could tell me, Sharon, about the types of advantages to companies of taking on an apprentice.
There's obviously financial advantages, but there are other sides to it as well, because it increases productivity, and there's been proven facts out there. They can develop the skills that they need for that young person. So you really are investing in a young person and giving them opportunities and to grow with the company and to grow with your ethos. They're not coming in with any preconceived ideas. There's reduced training salary and recruitment costs, so that's another advantage to a business as well. But I think it really is that you're engaging with a young person and developing them.
Say somebody wanting to be an apprentice in a company, do they tend to think of joining large companies, or do you encourage them to join a small local company?
Most of our businesses are micro companies or small medium enterprises, and that's what Wenta tend to engage with. And there are the large corporations as well that they can actually join. But if they actually go onto the apprenticeship website, for instance, at the moment in Hertfordshire, there are 1,428 opportunities out there for young people, and most of them are with the small micro companies.
Can you tell me how long it's been running for now, and what sort of feedback you've had from the scheme, Sharon?
Okay, well, we've been doing it since May, and we've done it from the business perspective, and because we knew they were struggling to understand how it worked. And it's about just demystifying some of those myths out there. And the feedback has been great because they just didn't realise the apprenticeship scheme was open to them. Business could find an apprenticeship. You know, if they knew a young person that they were interested in, they can actually team themselves up and then join the scheme as well.
If any businesses out there listening want to find out more about the apprenticeship scheme, can you tell us how we would find out more?
We have a team here that are prepared to come out and actually, with absolutely no obligation, come out and just explain how the scheme works to them. Because it's nice to be able to ask the questions and just find out, you know, a little bit more detail. And there are grants out there that are available to some companies. So it's very good for us to be able to do this one-to-one face interviews.
And if you want to find out more about Wenta's apprenticeships, then go to wenta.co.uk, click on the Education Programme tab, and then Apprentices, and you'll find everything you need to know. Trevor.
Great. And we still have Katerina Rudiger with us, who's the Head of Skills and Policy Campaigns at the CIPD. Katerina, it's quite interesting. She said that they went out and they found, sort of talking about the thing we were just talking about quite a degree of ignorance in the marketplace. I mean, is this something you're finding quite a lot in terms of people who just don't know the first thing about what's going on in the area of apprenticeship specifically?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's still quite common that most employers don't really know, how apprenticeships can work for them. So they perhaps, read things in the media and understand the concept, but they think, oh, it's not right for my company. But it's not just the employers. I think many young people also don't know about the opportunities that are available, and then more needs to be done to promote those in schools. But I think what was interesting about what Sharon said is that she really made a very good business case for apprenticeships. So she talked about the productivity. She talked about how apprenticeships are a way for employers to grow the skills they need and sort of get people trained in a way they want them to be trained in the organizational culture and so on. And so I think she made a really good business case, and I do think that's something, we just sort of need that message we need to take out to employers.
I think it's absolutely right. I think I mentioned a little earlier that I get approached probably about once a week, and people, they literally just say to me, do you want an apprentice? Now, that's probably not the right way around. Do you understand the apprenticeship principles? Do you understand the fact that the government is supporting the cost of this? Are you in the process of recruiting? Do you have any need for additional help? There's lots of different ways that you can approach the question with businesses to get the right sort of string of yeses going, such that people will find out more and get more interested. So there is a lot of education, but it needs to be sold into the businesses as it needs to be sold to the kids.
I think too, one thing that Sharon said, which I do agree with, is a lot of people do associate apprenticeships with learning how to be a plumber, those types of things. And I think that is quite a big. A lot of people are under that illusion that that's the only thing apprenticeships are, and I think that's one of the big things that people do need to get out, that apprenticeships people can work in all sorts of companies in all sorts of roles.
Yeah, that was part of her clip that I was really interested about. She'd actually said all that, there's solicitors and all sorts of people. I mean, Is that one of the myths that you come across then, that sort of the lack of breadth of knowledge of exactly what's offered?
Definitely. There's so many frameworks out there now, and employers are actually, under the new forms, actively driving it, so they can put together their own standards for apprenticeships and are really in the driving seat, but many just think about them as the sort of traditional jobs and for certain young people, whereas it should be a real alternative to university, really.
I think that's a really great phrase, that it's a real alternative, as opposed to if you can't get into university or you can't afford university or you don't want to leave home, go and do an apprenticeship. It shouldn't be like that. It's a real alternative, isn't it? It's a really different way of approaching the next phase of your life, and that's really, really important. Certainly from the young people that we spoke to, and we'll be hearing from them later, that are on apprenticeship programmes, it was absolutely bang on for them, and they're having a fantastic time, and they're earning and learning at the same time, which is what lots and lots of people just need to do from a practical perspective. There just aren't other options. But how do we get more of this education out there without hundreds of pounds worth of marketing budgets? How do we manage to get the message out? Apart from programmes like this, which of course are doing a fantastic job to do that, what else can we do in the community to help businesses and young people understand better?
I think what we need to do is send apprentices out into schools and into education, so the people we're going to hear later, if they would go into schools and talk to their peers about what an apprenticeship is, I'm sure many more young people would actually choose to do an apprenticeship. And when it comes to employers, again, I think that's what we're trying to do in terms of disseminating best practice and really celebrate successful programs. I think we will hear from Barclays later. They've done a fantastic job with their apprenticeship program, and that's something we sort of need to get out there and really show employers that they're missing out if they're not doing the same.
I wonder where do the recruitment companies fit into this mix? Do they hate this whole setup, or should they actually be part of the setup? Should they be included in the mix in some shape or form? I mean, because at the moment it sort of seems like they're cut out of this, and it's taking their livelihood out of their hands. So actually, maybe if one incorporated them into the process somehow, or got them on board, then it wouldn't be excluding them, and they could be pretty useful because they understand this stuff.
Well, that's a difficult one, Vicky, because I guess recruitment companies are paid to bring somebody in who can do the job, and I think what we're trying to do is say, you don't need that. You actually can somebody teach everything they need to learn in the workplace as long as they have the right attitude. So I do think there's a bit of an uphill struggle with recruitment companies. But, as you say, perhaps if employers sort of are more specific when they talk to recruitment companies and say, do you know what, we don't necessarily need to have somebody who's a fully fledged employee already. Let's look for young people. Then, quite often recruitment companies are getting in touch with a lot of young people, and they could sort of put them in touch with providers and so on. So they could help in bridging that gap.
Okay, right. Well, on the business, as you know, we love to get out and about and talk to lots of businesses in the field. So the other day I went to sunny Rickmansworth and asked Justin Smith Milne of Smith Milne Accountants why he has apprentices in his business.
Our business was first established in 1981 by a chap called Barry Baxter, and we were sole practitioners in Pinner. I started with the practice as a work experience student straight from school. Mr. Baxter recognised my potential and gave me a job on my day off from college, and when I finally left college, started full-time with him. I then went on to qualify with the firm, then became a salaried partner, then remortgaged my flat and became an equity partner, and in 2009 Mr Baxter finally retired and remortgaged again and bought the rest of it. And so I've always recognised that a young person with the right mentality can achieve things irrespective of their background or education. You don't need to have a degree to become an accountant. I was in the process of recruiting because I'd just taken over another practice. I just happened to get an email from college in Oakland's college about taking on an apprentice, and it just came in at the right time. So I read it and met with the college, and we went through an interviewing process, and I took on an apprentice. A week later I took on another apprentice.
That's quite brave, to taking two when you were planning on just a straightforward recruitment.
Well, it worked so well.
Why did it work well?
It worked well. Both these guys were committed to a full college course, which was day release. So they worked for me 4 days a week and go into college 1 day a week. So they'd actually committed themselves to that. The first one was really good, to be honest.
Saying that loudly, is he downstairs at the moment?
He's downstairs.
He's going to be asking for a rise.
That's right, yeah. Well, he's actually coming to the end of his apprenticeship, so he's actually going to get offered a proper job.
Excellent.
The assistance you get, not just from the course and the people that run the apprentice scheme, but the financial assistance you get from the government. The apprentices are paid very low waged, like cockle picker sort of money. In the first year I took on apprentices, the government actually, I think they paid about £4,000 per apprentice, which pretty much covered their wages, because their wages are only about £100 a week.
Goodness me. So this is, I mean, that's over the minimum wage because of the hours that they're doing, is it?
It's
or not?
Below the minimum wage.
Really?
It was all part and parcel of the apprentice scheme that was sold to me. But that's what you give them for the first year. Then the second year they go on to minimum wage or whatever you want to pay them.
So was the attraction for you in the first instance, and you can be really honest or not, the fact that actually what you could get was somebody that was really good, really dedicated, that was going to be considerably cheaper?
Yes, and the whole recruitment is a nightmare. Recruitment consultants charge a fortune. You might end up with someone they're great in an interview. A few months down the line, they lost you 15% already. You've gone. With the apprentice scheme, there was a class of 20, and it's like shooting fish in a barrel. And
you got some really good guys. What were the problems that you experienced? I mean, it sounds as though it's nirvana at the moment, but there must have been some difficulties.
There was a difficulty. I mean, the first year I took on apprentices, I took on two. One of them is absolutely great. One of them wasn't so great. And I heard from the college he wasn't attending class and things like that, so unfortunately he's no longer.
So he didn't take it seriously. You could see that,
and
right. Therefore it just didn't work out. And how much support did the college give you to sort that problem out?
They were very good, really. They came in as soon as they identified there was a problem with that particular student. They came in to see me, and we sat down and talked about what had happened, and he was obviously getting thrown off his course. Which,
do you think you could have done a better job, or they could have done a better job in finding the right person for you? And you said shooting fish in a barrel, but you shot the wrong fish.
I shot the wrong fish, yeah. I interviewed about 10 people, and I chose him. And I obviously...
What made you choose him, and what learning did you get afterwards that maybe you could sort of, next time you took on, you changed your interviewing process?
I chose him with my heart rather than my head. He was obviously from a disadvantaged background, and like I said, I think everyone deserves a chance in life if they're prepared to work for it. And unfortunately, he wasn't. So.
Okay, but it didn't put you off. You took on
another
one and another one.
That's right. Yes, virtually the day he left, I phoned the college and I said, right, have you got anyone else? And they said, well, yeah, we've got a new intake starting this year. So I said, right.
And this time you used your head rather than your heart.
I did indeed.
So to get in touch with Justin of Smith Milne, call him on 01923 832 303 or www.smithmilne.co.uk. But of course it's one thing to hear from the boss, but what about the apprentices working with Justin? I wanted to know, so I grabbed a quick word with Leah Dickinson, who Smith Milne took on for an apprenticeship a year ago.
I first started in West Herts College, doing business and finance, and I was doing sort of bookkeeping on the side for my dad, like a little job on the side, and he and then I just thought I'd get into that. I thought it was a good sort of path to take, so I looked for an apprenticeship because I didn't want to go to uni. I wasn't sort of interested in that. It wasn't the path for me. I found the 3 A's, and they set me up with Smith Milne & Co, and I'm really happy here.
And no looking back then?
No.
And do you still have to do homework and pass exams even though you've got a day job?
It's all right. It's not. I learn stuff on the job as well, so it helps with the exams and everything. And if I needed any help, I know my work will give me the help that I need, and they'll guide me through.
So for you, it makes more sense to be working, to be earning at the same time as learning.
Yeah, that was.
And presumably, does it make the learning easier?
Yeah, it does. I think it makes it a lot easier. It's on the job training basically, but obviously I go somewhere else to do the actual learning and my exams. I think it's a really good way to get into work instead of going to university and just learning one subject. I can work in the environment and do the studying as well. So.
And if you were to give advice to any other sort of fellow apprentices, what would it be in terms of, how to choose a company to work for or a subject to go into?
You need to think about what you want to do and where you want to go with your career and which path you want to take. Whereas
it's about really understanding where the areas that you want to specialise in, and then finding the firms that specialise in that area, and then going forward. Have there been any downsides?
No, I've sort of adjusted to working here, and
how long have you been here?
A year now. Yeah.
So coming up to the first anniversary and still smiling.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you ever so much for talking to us. I wish you every success in the future. It seems like a really, really nice place to work.
Thank you very much.
That was Leah Dickinson from Smith Milne, and before that was Justin Smith Milne, also of Smith Milne, the business. Picking up with Katerina on this, it was interesting. Lots of interesting analogies being given by Justin, but in amongst all that, he was talking about, well, one of his apprentices was great, one was not so great. Do you think that's something that might put some people off, that sometimes it can be a bit hit and miss, whether you've got a good one or not?
Well, I think it's great that Justin, that it didn't put him off, but I think it might have been different if that was his first apprentice, and he might have thought, I'm never going to get somebody good. So that's obviously a bit unfortunate, but they're people, so sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it was very interesting what he said in terms of giving young people a chance, and that that he recognized that if you have the right attitude, you don't need a degree. So that's great. In terms of his attitude towards young people, but also interesting about his background. So he said he left school and went straight into business, and I'm sure nobody expected him to be work ready then. So he kind of probably kept that memory, and that has influenced his attitude. That of course, when you leave education, you're not work ready, but he sees himself as playing a role in building that work readiness in a young person. I think that's a really good example.
It's a really nice story as well, that he was helped along the way, and he has really come through and now owns the business. Because he was given a helping hand, it seemed like a wonderful thing for him to do, to actually give people a helping hand. But he was also very honest. And what was really nice, of course, is that he had the one bad experience, and 2 weeks later, replaced that particular person. The other thing that struck me in the interview was he got a lot of help from people at Oaklands College, and that's fantastic for businesses to know that there's really experienced, really skilled people actually at the other end that can help you find the right person. Does that happen normally across colleges and higher education?
So what we say to our members, to employers, is really pick your provider very well. So I think, Vicky, you mentioned earlier providers cold calling you and saying, oh, I have an apprentice for you for free. You know, those are probably not the people you want to go with. You probably want to go into a college and really have a look at it and have a look at what they're offering and make sure it's right for your business, and make sure that they understand what you need, and make sure that the apprentice is supported as well. And sometimes, unfortunately, you know, providers wouldn't provide that much support and care, and that's when sort of the relationship breaks down. So choosing a good FE college, a good provider, is very, very important. But again, there's some onus on the employer as well, so don't, you know, take the easy route. Really engage with that organisations and make sure that you understand what they offer and make them understand what you're looking for.
And I thought Leah had some really good points about, you know, she really had a very clear idea of what it was she wanted to do. She researched the market to find the right sort of business, and clearly was having a very, very good time and finished her first year. Now, one of the things that was mentioned was coming to the end of the apprenticeship. Is it guaranteed that you get the job, that you get offered a job at the end of an apprenticeship? Or what could happen at the end if you didn't get offered a job? Could you just go on another apprenticeship?
In some cases, unfortunately, there aren't any jobs for young people, but I think this is the kind of narrative we want to build, and this is really where it comes back to the business reasons. Why, as an employer, would you invest in bringing somebody in and training them in the way you want them to learn the job if you don't want to keep them on? So that doesn't make any sense. So we would say to employer as well, if you invest your time in this person and make sure there's a job for them at the end.
Yes, well, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So I think we're nearly moving into one of our next clips. It's Mike Thompson and Laura Webber. We've discussed smaller businesses and how they can learn a lot from bigger businesses. They don't come much bigger than Barclays. No. So Trevor actually spoke to Mike Thompson, the Director of Early Careers there, and Laura Webber on how the higher apprenticeship worked within the bank. As you'll hear, the experience has changed Laura's life around, and Mike started by telling us how the Barclays scheme works.
The programme has, at the moment, 1,500 apprentices have either gone through the programme or are currently completing their apprenticeship, and we'll be looking to target up to 2,000 young people by the end of this year. And we target young people who are not in education, training or employment, so young people who have left the education system and who are job seeking, and quite often have been out of looking for jobs for quite some considerable time, typically a minimum 6 months unemployed. We wanted to focus in on that particular group, one, because we felt there was a lot of talent that was going unutilised, and also because we felt as a big organisation in the UK, we wanted to tackle what is one of the biggest sort of issues that we face, which is youth unemployment. And bringing 1,000 young people into an organisation has a very sort of galvanising effect.
Right. Okay. And also with me is Laura. And Laura, you're one of these people who's had a galvanising effect on the Barclays business, as Mike says. I mean, tell us what was life like though for you before you became an apprentice?
So before I became an apprentice at Barclays, I was unemployed for about 2 years, and finding it quite hard to get employment actually anywhere, because I'd left school with no qualifications. So it was really hard, and then was told about the Barclays apprenticeship scheme at my local job centre, and I applied. I didn't really want to apply because I didn't have any qualifications, so I didn't think I could get far. But then they also told me that you can gain your qualifications as well as working full-time for Barclays. So here I am 2 years later.
Okay, but I mean, just interestingly, you were saying that you weren't sure to start with about whether you wanted to apply. I mean, do you think there's a confidence issue affecting many people who were in your position?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's because it's such a big company as well. You don't think that big companies like Barclays want to employ, especially younger people that have left school, before they should, or even without qualification. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I didn't want to apply.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank goodness you did, and there you are now, sort of on as a Barclays apprenticeship. I mean, what kind of difference has it made to you? It's changed my life without sounding cheesy. I mean, I probably wouldn't be half the person that I am now. I've grown in confidence. I've met so many new people along the way, and yeah, it's just changed me as a person. And now I can look forward to a happier future, if I'm honest. What would you say to employees who are thinking about it but haven't yet done so?
I would encourage them to really think seriously about it. I think apprenticeships take some of the risks out of hiring young people for a number of reasons. The first is that there's some great support in getting people into your business. The government's just introduced a programme called traineeships. Traineeships are pre-employment programmes that allow an employer to give work experience to a young person, and if you like, try before they buy, and also give that young person employability skills through some classroom training. So that essentially you get somebody who's already worked in your business for a short period of time. You've had a chance to look at them as a potential employee, and they've also got some skills training to make sure when they join your business, they're going to turn up on time, present themselves well, communicate well. So I think there's an incentive to help recruit young people. I also think when you're bringing somebody into your business as an apprentice, the support you get from the local colleges, training providers who deliver apprenticeships is absolutely fantastic. They will help and advise all the way along the journey for a small business or any size of business, and they'll provide support both for the training but also advice to the business on the different ways they can set up their apprenticeship, how they can find young people, what sorts of qualifications that business should be considering. So the support network is absolutely fantastic, and it's something I would encourage any business to think about.
Now, I was really inspired by talking to Mike Thompson there, and Director of Early Careers, and also Laura, who's now on a higher apprenticeship, and for a couple of reasons. One is Mike said something very refreshing. If I put this to you, Katerina, he said apprenticeships reduce the risk, and as in he was saying actually that's a really good sort of way of doing things. Many businesses though maybe see it as a bit of a risk, and I was very refreshed by his attitude. Now you could say, well, he's got a big business there, Barclays, and they're going to pick the cream, but I was quite refreshed by that. And then also Laura's story, I mean, we could maybe talk about that a little bit as well. 2 years unemployed, I mean, and actually not having the confidence initially to actually apply for the job until it was made clear that actually it didn't matter. You don't have any qualifications. In fact, specifically looking for people just like you, Laura. And so those two things, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's really quite extraordinary what Barclays have done, because back to your point around risk, what Barclays have done is they haven't gone for the easy group, they haven't gone for the best. They have said, actually, we're going to recruit people who are unemployed, who are in the need category, who don't have the skills we're usually looking for. So they've taken a big risk, and it's paid off because they were much more loyal. They bring a different attitude, different skills to the organizations, and I think it really galvanized the organization, as Mike said. And they're running a fantastic program, so much so that they have actually one of our awards last week, so our Best Youth Initiative Award. Right. And I think Laura's story shows very well how this kind of different approach towards young people can really help turn someone's life around.
Right.
It is. It's just a fabulous story, and it's a win-win all round, isn't it? And it's good to hear that Barclays are being recognised for that effort. What do you think made them choose this slightly more difficult set of people?
I think in their case it really came from the top. So that CEO Anthony Jenkins said we really ought to do something about this problem, and we ought to do something differently. And I think that has really helped to get the organisation behind this. And then I think what they've done is they brought in a few young people, and it worked out really well. And so they've sort of went out to recruit more. And as Mike said, they're looking at scaling this really up. So I think they're taking a big risk, and it paid off, and they put a lot of weight behind this.
Well, let's hope that more companies will take these risks. Do you think they will? Do you think that Barclays will, by setting this example, will encourage some of the other big banks or big companies to actually go this route? And do you think there's enough publicity around it?
Yeah, I think so. I think hopefully that will demonstrate to other employers that actually they're almost missing a trick. So this is what Mike is saying, isn't he? There's so much unused talent out there, and you can see people like Laura. Laura's amazing. She's actually part of our CIPD youth group who feeds into our work, and somebody like that, you wouldn't usually recruit.
And she was also saying that she now goes and talks to other sort of young sort of would-be apprentices or apprentices, so she's part of that sort of onboarding sort of initiative now, because she knows what it's like to have been them and sort of maybe sort of come into a business. I mean, one other thing that Mike did say that we didn't put in that interview, but he was also talking about strategically Barclays we're looking and actually thinking we don't have enough of certain types of skills as well, including the digital skills and particularly in terms of their demographic profile wasn't quite well. So it's important to recognise that it's not just altruism here. It's actually there's a real kind of business imperative as well. And luckily there was a sort of happy coincidence of the two.
I mean, there is a clear business case for bringing in young people, as you say, digital skills, new ideas, energy, but also you need to represent your customer base, and I think that was a very strong driver for Barclays as well. You need to have more diverse and people from different backgrounds, but people of different ages working in your organisation if you really can respond to customer needs.
How long did it take Barclays to get their programme up and running?
I think it took them a few years, but I think the payback, so the positive stories, came in quite quickly, so that has really helped them to get some weight and energy behind it.
So it's quite a quick turnaround in a big business like that. The 2 years turnaround is a very, very fast moving. They're big oil tankers, these organisations. So to get something from a yes to actually having success stories to winning awards and cranking it up because you can see the positive results, a 2 year cycle is very, very good, I would say. And a lesson for lots of other businesses out there. If Barclays can do it, then lots of smaller ones can too.
I think as we're coming towards the end of the show, it's probably worth spending just a minute or two, Katerina, just maybe going back to the bigger picture on this. Now, you're head of skills and policy campaigns, and obviously part of that has been around your own sort of learning to work initiative, which is I think 2 years. You've been doing this for 2 years. What changes have you seen during that time, and what are the things that aren't quite happening yet, but you really feel like you need to give another bit of a shove to?
That's a very good question. I think what we have seen is in the last few years really employers sort of starting to engage with this agenda. So a few years ago, most employers will still recruit somebody with experience. They wouldn't even look at young people coming straight out for education. And now you have a number of employers, not just Barclays, but others as well, looking at, opening up their organizations and offering apprenticeships and other routes into their organizations. So that's fantastic. But I think whilst this is a trend going up, still more needs to be done. And I think one of the things in particular we'll be looking at in the future is how we can adapt recruitment practices and to bring in young people from different backgrounds and not just look at degrees and qualifications, because employers always say we recruit for attitude and train for skill, but then they select according to qualifications and degrees and so on. So I think that's something we need to look at going forward. Okay,
that's brilliant, Katerina, and thank you very much. Now we always do a little roundup where we say quite quickly, and we'll have to be quite quick, I think, in terms of what have we learned from this week. Claire, what do you think?
Yeah, I think as we mentioned earlier, it's just to let companies know it's not a big risk. Sharon mentioned to me that the minimum period to take an apprentice on for is a year. So everyone can afford to take an apprentice on for a year, particularly with the amount of support they get. And bear in mind that an apprentice can be an apprentice for anything.
Yeah, I think, a good point. Apprentices can be apprentices for anything. I think the stuff that I've really sort of got to grips with is that there's a real sort of communications problem between businesses and youth and schools and educational sections, and it's such a shame because everybody wants some of this and everybody wants it to work. So anything we can do to help that is fantastic.
Okay, and that's it from the business. Thank you again to Katerina Rudiger, Head of Skills and Policy Campaigns. As always, keep your views coming via email and Twitter, but for now, from Vicky, Clare and myself, it's good night.
The Business, sponsored by Kingston Smith Chartered Accountants.
If there's anything in the show you want to talk to us about, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.